I used to study Italian in college, but ho dimenticato tutto.
Buongiorno, benvenuti a Lucca Comics Games. Oggi abbiamo questo fantastico incontro con Cassandra. Io sono Miriam, niente da dire, introdurrò l'evento, poi se avete delle domande procederemo anche con le vostre domande, va bene? Ok, iniziamo con la prima domanda. Chi è Cassandra? So che sei un'autrice fantastica, però vorrei sapere un qualcosa in più di te, tutto ciò che mi vorresti dire, insomma.
Let's see. Other than, so yes, I'm a fantasy author. I love to read and I love to travel. I think this is my 18th trip to Italy in my life. I used to study Italian in college, but ho dimenticato tutto. So yeah, that's me.
Evviva!
Oh, I have 4 cats.
Oh!
Interesting.
Possiamo sapere i nomi dei gatti?
Oh yeah. They're Reginald, Rosie, Izzy, Isabel, and Oscar.
Qual è stata la prima storia che ti ha spinta a iniziare a raccontare le tue di storie?
Oh my gosh. So when I was maybe 11 or 12 years old, my father gave me Interview with the Vampire.
Oh,
Yeah. And I was in love with it, and I wanted to be a vampire, and I was so excited. I decided I was going to write my own vampire book, and so I did. And I looked at it a little while ago. It was very bad, and it was also exactly like Interview with the Vampire. All the same stuff happened. But, you know, you have to start somewhere, and yeah, that was the one.
Beautiful. Hai creato una saga molto ampia che tocca diversi periodi cronologici. Come hai gestito gli archi narrativi e qual è il tuo preferito?
I mean, I think when I first started the books, obviously I set them in the present day because I didn't want to start out writing historical fiction. It's more difficult, there's more research, it's more complicated, and I wasn't sure if a publisher would buy it. But after the Mortal Instruments, like in the middle of the Mortal Instruments really, when it came out, I went to my publisher and said, I would like to write more books in this world. And they said, great. And I said, they're going to take place in 1878, in the 19th century. And they were horrified, like, no, we don't want that. Nobody's going to read historical fiction, and teenagers don't read that. But I convinced them, and that was the what we call the infernal devices, and that was actually my favorite time period. I had a lot of fun. Just for 6 months, I only watched TV and movies that was set in the Victorian period, and I only read books written in the Victorian period, and I read the diaries of people who lived at that time, and by the end of it, my husband said I was talking like someone in a historical drama.
I tuoi protagonisti discendono dagli angeli, eppure sono mortali. Qual è il motivo di questa scelta?
Interesting. I think, okay, in terms of creating the Nephilim and their powers, the Shadowhunters, I was compelled by the story that's in the Bible about how angels came to Earth and they had a race of children with human women. And I thought, okay, there's something really interesting about this. In the Bible, they're described as monsters, but, and I thought, but maybe they're not monsters in, the sense of being like, big and hideous. Maybe they're very powerful. And so the sort of idea of the race of human hybrids came. And I did not want to make them immortal because I feel like that's too much power. It's hard to relate to someone who is so different from you, who has all this strength, these gifts, and also is never going to die. And I wanted their job to be dangerous. They had to be able to be wounded and to die and to suffer like human beings, because otherwise they don't feel like people.
Ok. Le tue donne sono guerrieri forti e combattive, tanto forti da essere riuscite a cambiare anche la loro società nell'arco dei tuoi libri. Raccontami com'è stato riuscire a renderli ancora più predominanti all'interno degli Shadowhunters, dei libri di Shadowhunters.
Well, when I first started to write books, it was 20 years ago, and we did not have the sort of discussion about strong female characters that we have now, where that's something much more common. So at the time, I thought, when I was growing up, I, loved fantasy books and I read so many, but always the hero was a man. And what if I can write a story like this for girls where they can see themselves in the book? And over the years, I have tried to write a lot of my books from the point of view of marginalized characters. So sometimes women, sometimes they are queer, sometimes they are neurodivergent. So I always want everyone to feel like they could be a shadow hunter and they could be a hero. And I think, I started with Clary because I didn't see another character like her in books, and I have continued with strong female characters, but also, have sort of gone out to do more different kinds of characters who speak from a marginalized perspective.
I tuoi young adult hanno ispirato e coinvolto tantissimi lettori ancora prima della nascita di questo termine. Quanto influisce il fandom sulle tue storie?
I mean, I have always been a fan, so it's very strange to go from being a fan to having fans. And I think, they were an influence on my work because I interacted with them kind of the way I did when I was a fan. So we would talk about, different theories and different ideas for characters, and I knew who their favorites were. And I never changed the story, like to please anyone specifically, but sometimes when they really loved a character, I would give that character more to do, more space, and sometimes when they spoke about what kind of character they would like to see, I would give that real consideration because, like I said, I want them all to feel like they could be a shadow hunter.
Prima hai parlato di queste donne forti che sono anche libere a un certo punto di esprimere i loro sentimenti, quindi mi piacerebbe conoscere come hai gestito i sentimenti all'interno delle tue opere.
I mean, I love writing female characters, and I do want them to be strong, but I think there are lots of different kinds of strength. So sometimes you have a female character who is, like can fight. But sometimes you can have female characters that are strong in different ways. They can be very smart. They can, be very strategic. And so I wanted to represent different facets of the ways that women are strong. So someone like Charlotte is strong in the fact that, she is a powerful politician, whereas someone like Emma is strong because she is a warrior. So I think that in that sense, the other thing that is important to me is also to show flaws and mistakes, because everyone makes mistakes, everyone has flaws, and I want to sort of write about, women who are fully complete as people, and so that includes, shades of gray, and that includes, sometimes making, mistakes, sometimes even very bad mistakes.
Com'è stato vedere nelle tue opere trovare dei volti attoriali umani, quindi la trasposizione delle opere in poi versione sullo schermo?
It's strange, and also because there's both a movie and a television show, and they're different actors. When I look at the actors, I don't see my character, I see the person because I know them. So I see like, oh, that's Jamie, oh, that's Lily, oh, that's, Dominic or Matthew. Like, I feel like they are people who are doing a really good job dressing up as my characters, which is not their fault. It's just, I think, when you are a writer, you have this very clear idea in your head of what your characters look like, and you can't really change that. But I will say the thing for me, like with especially the movie, when you go on the set and you see that they have created your whole world, and they have built the institute, and they have built the houses of the characters, and they have filled them with all the things that the characters would have, at that point you feel this like really intense, like sort of shock and like amazement. And every writer I have ever talked to who had a movie of their book, they had the same experience. And I remember once reading an interview with J.K. Rowling, and she said that she began to cry when she saw Diagon Alley. So it wasn't the characters, because it was the place. And I think there's something about being surrounded by your world in a visual way that is just stunning.
Qui a Lucca oggi presenti ben 3 opere, che sono Come i cuori degli angeli, I segreti di Blackthorn Hall e Storie di illustri Shadowhunters e abitanti del mondo dei nascosti. Ci puoi parlare di queste nuove pubblicazioni?
Right, so I in Lucca partly to promote my new books with Mondadori, which is a set of 4 books that I actually did originally as a Kickstarter project, which was really, I like to experiment with different kinds of publishing. So I've published my own books, I've done only audiobooks, and so this time I thought I wanted to do a Kickstarter, which was really fun, and I had a great time. And at the end of the Kickstarter, I had these books, and so, Mondadori has collected them, and, given them new art, new look, new cover, and everything. So they're all Shadowhunter related. So the first one is called Secrets of Blackthorn Hall. Whatever it's called in Italian, I don't know.
Segreti di Blackthorn Hall.
Right, which is a story that is told in letters between the characters. There's notable Shadowhunters and Downrollers, which is a guide to all the characters. So there's art of the characters, and then there's information about them. A story called A Sea Change, which follows one of the characters from The Last Hours, which is one of my historical series. After the end of the series, we find out what happens to him and, whether he has a happy ending. And the last one is probably the most book-like. It's called, in English, Better in Black. And it's 10 sort of romantic stories from the world of the Shadowhunters. And in that one, I think, an interesting thing about being guided by fans, because over the years I had a sense of who their favorite couples were, who they really loved and wanted to see more of. And so I created this, this is basically like a gift, like, here's some romantic tales about your favorite characters, and you will learn some unexpected things about them.
Ti farò un'ultima domanda, poi lascerò spazio anche a voi. Question. Che cosa ti lascia senza niente da dire? Che può essere un qualcosa che sia in un contesto sociale, personale, qualsiasi cosa tu voglia. Un qualcosa che appena ci entri a contatto rimani senza parole, ma poi ne vuoi parlare, vuoi dire anche la tua.
Well, the thing that leaves me speechless is when there is a twist in a book or a movie that I did not see coming, because I have spent many years writing, and so I know the structure of narrative very well. I can usually guess if something is going to happen. And if it comes out of nowhere for me, it's so great, and it's such a shock, and I'm like, oh my God, I never thought that was going to happen, and I'm so excited to be surprised, and also to learn from the movie or book, like, how did they do that?